All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're going to explore the incredibly deep but also super practical teachings of the great Indian sage Sri Ramana Maharshi. We're going to distill his core message, which is really all about a direct path to understanding who you truly are by looking at his most powerful ideas and analogies. So, Ramana Maharshi kicks things off with this really powerful warning. He basically believed that our entire struggle, all our suffering, it all boils down to one simple thing. We forget who we truly are. It's kind of like that modern anxiety of just being constantly distracted, right? He calls this forgetfulness the root of all evil. But his solution wasn't some complex ritual or doctrine. Nope. It was a simple, direct question aimed right at the heart of our being. And this is what brings us to the very core of his teaching, what he called a master's timeless question. This one single question is the key to his entire path. So let's explore what it is, why it's so incredibly powerful, and how it really unlocks everything else he taught. Now, this is a huge concept. For Ramana, the spiritual quest isn't about finding some deity out there in the sky. He taught that the ultimate reality, the divine, whatever you want to call it, it's found by looking inward. The whole journey is just a journey back to the self.
Now, you might be thinking, there are tons of spiritual paths out there, and Ramana knew that. He talked about things like breath control and meditation, but he almost always prescribed just one, self-inquiry. And why is that? Well, because he saw it as the most direct route, cutting right through all the complicated theories and getting straight to the source of who we think we are, that little voice, that persistent feeling of I.
But to walk this inward path, we first have to understand the main obstacle, which, funnily enough, is also our main tool. And this brings us to the crucial question of the mind. Is it our friend or is it our foe? Ramana's take on what the mind truly is, well, it's absolutely essential to this whole journey. So the big question becomes, what is the mind really? It sounds simple, but Ramana's answer shows this fundamental split between the mind's pure natural state and the agitated, thought-filled version that most of us experience every single day. And it's this split that explains why we so often feel so conflicted and, well, lost.
And here it is, the key distinction he made. On one hand, you've got the pure mind. In its natural state, the mind is just pure awareness. It's calm, it's clear. But then, through what he called nescience, which is just a fancy word for spiritual ignorance, it forgets this pure state. It gets all tangled up in activity, starts thinking it's the body, and becomes the mind we actually experience, just a nonstop stream of thoughts, judgments, and desires. And he gives this pretty stark warning that this disturbed, erroneous mind is treacherous. It poses as our friend, right? It's our advisor, our inner voice. But if we give it even a tiny bit of room without being vigilant, it will, in his words, topple us down. So step one is recognizing this foe that's pretending to be our friend. So if this noisy, agitated mind is the problem, what's the solution? Well, this leads us to the ultimate destination of this path. The goal is the true self. The aim isn't to fix the mind, but to actually bypass it completely and realize the true nature that's just quietly sitting there beneath all the noise. You see, the self isn't something you create or achieve. It's what you already are. It's the silent, unchanging consciousness that's watching the mind, the body, and the world go by. Think of it like the screen on which the movie of your life is playing out. Ramana used this really powerful analogy to help explain this. Imagine the self is a lamp, right? And it's always shining in an inner room. But there's this inner wall of ignorance blocking its light. The ego, our sense of I, is like a mirror that only catches a very faint reflection of that light. Our big mistake is thinking that the reflection is the real thing. Here's another fantastic analogy. The world we perceive, all our thoughts and feelings, they're just like pictures in a movie theater. They're projected by the mind, and they seem so incredibly real, but they have no substance on their own. They are literally nothing without the light of the self, the lamp in the projector that lights them up. Okay, so the challenge is clear. How do we quiet the mind down enough to perceive this self? This brings us to the different paths to inner peace. Because while Ramana championed one very direct path, he totally understood that different people might need different starting points. He basically saw two main ways to quiet the mind. First, there's yoga, which uses techniques like breath control to try and subdue the mind's constant activity. And second, there's jnana, the path of knowledge,
which uses direct inquiry to understand and eventually dissolve the mind altogether.
And his analogy for this is just perfect. Think of a wild, turbulent bull. He said methods like breath control are like trying to wrestle that bull into submission. It can work, but it takes a ton of force and constant effort. In contrast, self-inquiry is like gently coaxing that same bull with some tasty green grass. The goal's the same, but the method is this subtle, persistent invitation rather than a forceful battle.
And this path of green grass brings us right to the heart of his teaching, the method he thought was the most effective for absolutely everyone, no matter who they were. This is the direct path of self-inquiry. And this is why his teaching is just so revolutionary. Self-inquiry doesn't require you to go live in a cave or master some complicated yoga poses. It can be practiced by anyone, at any moment, right in the middle of your daily life. It's an internal, moment-to-moment watchfulness. So how does it actually work? It's beautiful in its simplicity. Okay, a thought comes up, anger, something on your to-do list, a memory, whatever. Instead of just following it down the rabbit hole, you stop and you ask, to whom did this thought arise? And the immediate obvious answer is, to me. Then you turn your attention 180 degrees inward and ask the real question, who am I? Now this is so important. This is not about getting a verbal answer. It's not a mantra you repeat over and over. The question, who am I, is a tool. You use it to trace the feeling of I back to where it comes from. And as you do this, that I thought, which is the root of every other thought, it just subsides. By repeatedly cutting the root, the entire tree of the mind begins to wither away. Ramana uses this beautiful image of a river. He says the individual soul, our ego, is like a river that starts from the ocean. No matter how much it twists and turns through the landscape of life, its ultimate destiny is always to merge back into its source. Self-inquiry is just finding the most direct way back home. So what's the end of this journey? Liberation or release. But Ramana was very clear, this isn't about getting to some heavenly state in the future. It is simply the direct realization of what you already are, right here and now, underneath all the mental noise. It's not something you attain, it's something you discover. And this quote just sums it all up perfectly. The whole path is just this. You inquire into the nature of the I that feels trapped and is suffering, and by doing that, you realize your true nature, which was actually never trapped in the first place. That realization is the release. So, we end right where we began, with the master's timeless question. You see, he didn't offer a set of beliefs you had to follow. He offered a tool so you could discover the truth for yourself. The entire teaching isn't really an answer. It's an invitation to ask the most fundamental question of all. Who are you?